Mike Tyson in his prime, in those years from like, what was it, like 86, 87 to 89, 90, whatever those years were, where he was just storming the gates.
Mike Tyson. His name alone strikes fear into fighters everywhere. But what made him the scariest boxer ever? Today, we're diving into Joe Rogan's take on why Iron Mike was and still is a living nightmare in the ring.
Because he was more than just a heavyweight champion.
I was going to rip his heart out. I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been.
Now is trying to fight Mike Tyson. He should be doing a lot more.
Sometimes people forget about the high points. They don't look at the low points. They look at a fighter when they're not as good anymore, when they're not as committed anymore, maybe they have health problems. They don't look at the time when they were at their highest RPMs. That's what you got to look at it. To me, that's like Mike Tyson. Like, everybody wants to like look at who's the greatest heavyweight of all time. I don't think there's a greatest heavyweight of all time. I think the greatest like culturally significant heavyweight of all time is Muhammad Ali, because he was more than just a heavyweight champion. He was a guy who they denied him his ability to fight for 3 years because he wouldn't fight in Vietnam. He stood up for a lot of people that did not want the Vietnam War. And he's also one of the greatest fighters of all time. So he's got both things going on. But Mike Tyson in his prime, in those years from like, what was it, like 86, 87 to 89, 90, whatever those years were, where he was just storming the gates, I put that Mike Tyson up against anybody who ever lived. That guy was a special fighter. The Mike Tyson that beat Marvis Frazier was a
beast.
He was just a juggernaut. Just, you couldn't stop him. He was coming at you and he had everything. He had knowledge. He had this deep library of films that he would watch, because his manager was Jim Jacobs, who was this boxing historian. So Tyson would sit and watch all these great fighters. This is the Marvis Frazier fight. This to me is prime Tyson, other than winning the title at 20, which was prime too. But this is Mike Tyson when he was just at his fucking most destructive best. He just stalked people down and smashed them, and he moved so well. That was part of the thing about Tyson that people forget. It wasn't just the knockout punching. He was so hard to hit, man. He was bobbing and weaving. He was already short for a heavyweight, but he would get low and he would come at you, and look at those shots. Look at he puts him away. He's throwing things from his toes all the way up. He's got everything going for him. He's got deep knowledge of boxing. He's got Customato hypnotizing him from the time. That's Jim Jacobs right there, the guy with the glasses. That's the guy who was his manager and also had this incredible boxing archive. So he had everything. He had the need, because he wasn't getting any love in his life until he was 13 years old. Had this horrible life. Then all of a sudden he gets adopted by one of the greatest boxing minds of all time, who's also a hypnotist, and takes him when he's at his most vulnerable and he's the most need, right? He's on his own, and this fucking guy turns him into one of the greatest fighters the world's ever seen. The Tyson of that year, those years when he was like the Marvis Frazier years and the Larry Holmes years, he was a different guy. It's like a different model of fighter than we had ever seen in the heavyweight division before. A fucking destroyer, man, where every fight was an execution. And, you know, people would look at like later on in his life, like, look at this is him taking Marvis out. I mean, just ferocious, destructive, accurate, precise. Everything is perfect.
Perfect.
The technique is perfect. So strong. So he had everything going for him. He had incredible coaching. Teddy Atlas was one of his coaches. Kevin Rooney, working with Customato, and then desire. He had everything. He had heart, and he had just destructive power. That for those years, man, there's very few people that were ever like him.
They're just some people.